tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
As little as long ago, or as far away as forever, this is where we meet to celebrate what never was as it comes to pass. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio, and I thank you for taking the time to join us in this evening's broadcast. I have as guest with me Anthony Woodcock, who is known on YouTube as Godrules. He specifically put out, it's been a little while now, a video on the celestial dome. And those of you that follow my work, you know that I have been working for the last about 6-7 months on a book on that specific topic. And so I thought it would be interesting to share some fellowship with Anthony this evening and discussion on all of those kind of esoteric aspects of what is now being revealed again and is now coming to light, being poured forth into the public consciousness. And it makes for a very interesting study as far as looking into the biblical narrative. And so, Anthony, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. It's been kind of a long time coming. We've been in dialogue for, I guess, what seems to be a few months now, but finally we were able to come together at the same time and space to do the show. But before we continue, if you would give out your website, contact information, anything that you'd like to share, where people can go to look at your videos, support your work.
Sure, yeah. My YouTube channel is called Godrules, Godrules, just one word. And actually I have two channels. I have another one called Sons of Thunder. If you want to check that out, just type in Sons of Thunder and look for a cross and that's my channel. Godrules is my biggest channel, and I also have a website called godrules.net, not .com, but .net, and that one's been around for a while. It's got mainly biblical resources and stuff on that, and apologetics a little bit too.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about your journey of awakening and what kind of prompted you to get involved with creating videos and putting the word out on the different things that you cover in the scope of your work. Walk us through a little bit of your testimony.
Yeah, sure. I guess with this whole topic of is the Earth stationary, is it flat, concave, convex, all that kind of stuff, is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, not just that. I mean, even, I don't know if like 9/11 was the catalyst for me. And
Yeah.
Waking on, not just the flat Earth or the vaulted dome, but you're awakening to the deeper aspects of what's going on in the world.
Okay, I gotcha. Actually, mine was sort of different than most people. I started with the scriptures. I noticed some patterns in the scriptures that didn't jive with what was commonly being taught in some respects, and that kind of led me to looking at the early church fathers. And then from there, I started noticing that they would quote from these books that I'd never really heard of, from the Apocrypha and and the Book of Enoch and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is kind of strange. And then I started looking into that more, and then I just kind of went into a lot of other conspiracy topics, 9/11, and pretty much all at once, kind of noticed something was wrong with the horizon line. That was one of the first things with the whole, and also NASA, kind of the moon landings and the horizon line. Something didn't seem right there. At first, I was kind of joking about it. I didn't really, I kind of believed in heliocentrism. I thought it was just a joke to kind of look at these other theories. And I started doing videos on it, I was just trying to be honest and look at it objectively. And my first one was on concave Earth, and I wasn't really a believer when I made it. I was just kind of on the fence. I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. Maybe there's something to this. And, then that, of course, Flat Earth started becoming really big too, around that time on YouTube. And I was looking into both, but I just thought it was, at first I was kind of joking about it, but then I started getting more serious when I noticed that there was holes, things that didn't make sense with heliocentrism.
Right.
So that's kind of how my whole thing went.
Right on. So how long have you been doing videos and doing this kind of work?
Well, I started doing videos like maybe 3.5 years ago on YouTube, but I started out at first with the scriptures because I noticed some things that just didn't jive with common theology a little bit. And then from there, I started getting into science more. About probably 2 years ago, I started doing some science videos. And then lately I've been doing a lot more. The last 2 years is when I've been really hitting sort of the topics you cover a lot, and just all manner of sort of conspiracy end time stuff more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the extra biblical text. So do you study a lot of the pseudepigraphal, apocryphal, like the Nag Hammadi Codices, Dead Sea Scrolls? Do you
Yeah,
look into a lot of them? And
I mean, I'm a pretty busy person, but I have looked into a number of the pseudepigraphical texts, like the life of Adam and Eve and various apocalypse. There's various apocalypse books, and I've looked into some of those. I've looked into the Book of Enoch, the Secrets of Enoch. There's a Enoch 1, 2, and
right.
in the Apocrypha, I've looked into various aspects, and I've done videos on some of these. I started going through Genesis, kind of hitting on what the Apocrypha said on various books of the Bible. Genesis, I went through, maybe 15 chapters. Actually, I think I went through 20 chapters so far, just talking about what the Apocrypha and pseudepigraphy kind of hits on with Genesis. And so I haven't hit on that in a while, though. But
Well, can you tell us, because I spent a great deal of time actually in studying all of the extra biblical and extra canonical materials, and in my opinion, in doing so, I've learned, because I've built on the foundation of the canon, but I've been given greater insight into the specifics of that foundation by studying these other texts. And of course, I'm not saying that every one of them is in any way inspired, but certainly many of them are. And that, in my opinion, study of them, I've learned a great deal of what would be new material for people that are only locked into the canon or only study from the 66 book canon, or because in my opinion they kind of lock themselves into a box and won't even investigate or to examine anything outside of that box. And in my having done so for the last several decades, it's my opinion that's what has led me to revelation on so many of the things that I write about and share in my radio programs. And so, can you talk a little bit about your experience with these extra biblical texts and mention some of your most favorite ones and kind of what you have learned from them that you've not been able to glean from just the canonical materials?
well, I feel kind of like this was sort of prophesied. If you look at Second Ezra chapter 14, it prophesies about how many books will be accepted in the Old Testament, and it mentions 24 books. And that's, if you look at the Hebrew formation of the Old Testament canon, our 39 books in the Old Testament equal the 24 books of the Hebrew Old Testament, okay, the Hebrew Tanakh. And it's prophesied right in 2nd Ezra 14. It says they will, the good and the evil, the wheat and the chaff, will only accept 24 books in the Old Testament, and these other books are going to be hidden or put aside because they won't be able to accept them. The unrighteous people, as Jesus said, in the church, there's going to be wolves. And he talks about at the end, it will be the wheat and the chaff will be separated. So you have wolves in the church, or I think in a sense, Freemasons, those who are not of God, who pretend to be of God, who are trying to lead the church a certain direction. And they want you to stay away from these, the Apocrypha, for example. I mean, the King James Bible 200 years ago had the Apocrypha in it, and now it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I look at it, is that this was sort of prophesied that this would occur. And it's sort of I think that the Apocrypha, the meaning of Apocrypha, the term Apocrypha is hidden. And the fact that it's hidden, it keeps people in blindness on certain topics. And that's kind of what you were hitting on, is that these apocryphal books, pseudepigraphical books, kind of reveal a wisdom that you don't get in some respects with things beyond the basics of Christianity. Right. So that's kind of how I look at it. And Jude talks about the book of Enoch and the Assumption of Moses. And my favorite, honestly, is probably the book of Enoch. I also like the life of Adam and Eve a lot. I really like that one. It's kind of interesting.
Me too.
But it sounds like you've probably looked into it a lot more than me. I don't know how many you've read, but it sounds like you've probably looked into it more than me based on what you've said so far.
Yeah, I've read most of what you can find from the apocryphal text, and I'm also I like to investigate the Targums. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, I've heard of them. I haven't. I don't think I've looked into those though. Maybe
Okay.
you can refresh my memory here.
Yeah, the Targums came about after the Israelites were allowed to return back to the Holy Land after their Babylonian exile. When Nebuchadnezzar had taken them the 70 years of exile there in Babylon, and when they returned, and while they were living there, they basically assimilated Aramaic, which was the vernacular of the day. And the lay people, the mainstream Hebrew Israelites, um, were transacting with all the other people, economics, trade, bartering, that the Aramaic became the predominant language. It was the colloquial language for the people of that area. And so when they returned back, when Darius allowed them and Cyrus basically gave them the money to to move back and to rebuild the temple. Well, once worship began again there in the temple, the rabbis, they would read from the Hebrew text, the original Hebrew Torah, and they would have to then translate the scriptures that they were reading into the Aramaic lexicon, because the most of the people did not read Hebrew and recognize it in the way that they had previous to that 70 years of exile. And so the Targums are Targum just means translation, and they are the Aramaic translations of the original Hebrew Torah.
Okay, I got you. I spend a lot of time on the Septuagint. You've heard of that, probably, I'm sure.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I haven't focused much on the Aramaic. I've seen, what is it, the Pasha or whatever, is it the New
The
Testament in
Peshitta.
Aramaic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I haven't looked into the Aramaic much. I've looked a lot more into the Septuagint. Greek. I'm really into the Greek more than the Hebrew or the Aramaic.
Yeah.
So
Well, I like to study that as well, but the reason I like the Targum so much is because they go back to, like, first century CE, like when the people returned, and even during Christ's time, um,
oh yeah.
a lot of those texts date back to that time, and they're 1,500 years older than the King James, and in my
Oh yeah.
opinion, they have so much more detail that we has been lost to the various English translations for whatever reason, whether um, it's to hide certain teachings or to remove certain knowledge from, whatever it is. There.
Well, it could be also the fact that it's difficult to capture everything in a language
Oh
like
yeah,
that from its
absolutely.
culture into English, into our modern day English,
Hmm.
especially. Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
I understand what you're saying. I kind of think that too sometimes, that they are, maybe there's a few that wanted to push their own theology, so they kind of steered it a certain direction. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, most
So
certainly. Yeah,
yeah,
it's also my opinion that the councils, like the Nicene Council, and that the canonical process, that a lot of that was done in order to hide the truth, not more so to, create an authorized canon that only these books are divinely inspired, but that they were trying to keep out a lot of the teachings from the people, and to control what they had access to as knowledge. And so I
yeah.
don't. Yeah.
I mean, but there's also the factor of God. If you watch how Jesus spoke in the New Testament, he often hid truth from those who didn't really want it anyway. So you have to, if you're not truly seeking after God, you're not going to find certain, deeper knowledge, anyways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the key, because if you are earnest in your seeking and you are really sincere in your relationship with the Most High, then, in my opinion, He will most certainly ensure that you discover truth. But the way about coming to truth, in my opinion, is to try to study everything that you can in the different language translations, whether it's Greek or Aramaic, the English versions. That we should try to do parallel comparative studies on even the many multiple biblical the English biblical translations, that you can glean a lot of information from doing a comparative study on all of that material.
Oh yeah. I usually do it between the Hebrew and the Greek, with the Greek Septuagint and the Hebrew Masoretic. Or I also have a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's kind of hard to use because it's not really in biblical format. It's
Hmm.
completely different format. But yeah, that's some good points. And you were actually asking earlier about, kind of how the whole celestial dome relates to some of these works. And just, the fact that it talks about the stars falling from heaven, that right there should put up all manner of red flags for those
Right?
who believe in heliocentrism. That alone, right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I
But
fully agree.
yeah, I think it was in the latter part of the book of Enoch. It talks about, people will be in great confusion when some of these things happen, probably because they believe in heliocentrism, and they start
Yes.
seeing stuff falling from the heaven and be like, what is going on here?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And of
Yeah.
course, it's that Chicken Little thing. They want you to think
Hmm.
that you're crazy if you think Chicken Little. He thought the sky is falling. And that's
Right.
kind of like, the Freemason way of keeping people away from the truth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
because they'll place negative connotations or associations with different subject matter in order to steer people away from it, and to basically put an obstacle before them, because our indoctrination is so deep seated that for a lot of people, if you label something as conspiracy, or call it, lunacy, like the whole aspect of, the study with the flat earth or the vaulted dome. I mean, you bring up flat earth and people think, that's just complete lunacy. It's absolutely ludicrous to even second guess that we are living on a ball. Um,
Yeah.
and so a lot of that controls people and keeps them from ever investigating or looking into those kind of topics.
Well, I mean, so, and one of the things I know a lot of flat earthers might not like this exactly, but some of them are starting to come onto this. Some are really starting to come onto this, that maybe it's not exactly flat. It could be like a bowl. I'm kind of asking myself, what is the exact shape? Do we have to make it exactly flat? And I don't know if you know that about what I've been sort of saying on video, but I've talked to Mr. Thrive and Survive. I don't know if you know who he is, but he does a lot of flat earth videos. And he and I have talked many times, and he's been open to the idea a little bit. The Morgal, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a flat earther on YouTube, and he's also been into. He's also kind of been warming up to the idea it might not be perfectly flat, that it could be slightly curved or something to that effect. But the whole idea is that we're not on a spinning ball. We're not on a ball for one, and
And that it's
it's
not
not
moving.
spinning. It's not spinning. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely not spinning.
Yeah,
So
I'm in agreement with you that no matter what you think as to what the shape of the Earth is, I mean, we're all really still exploring the different options in connection to that. But no matter what you think of the shape, it most certainly and scientifically has been affirmed that the Earth is not moving, that there is no motion, it is not spinning in any rate of speed. So that in and of itself totally negates the whole heliocentric worldview, and that whole premise can be thrown out the window. And so, again, no matter what you think of its shape, it definitely is not moving.
I have actually I think it's in the Celestial Dome video. I think I kept a clip in it where I go through and I explain very concisely how you can go from these experiments like Aries failure, and the Morrison experiment, and I think a couple other ones, the Sagnac experiment. I go through and I show how they made certain assumptions that were incorrect, and then I show how if you take the conclusions from each one, it's guaranteed that we are not moving. And it's in the Sagnac experiment in of itself, with the the evidences from Aries failure and the Morrison experiment show that there's no way we're moving.
Right.
So, but I don't have that in front of me right now, and I can't get on the internet with this computer. So,
Oh yeah, no
unfortunately,
worries.
yeah.
A lot of people are familiar with what you're talking about,
Oh
and
yeah.
Kathy actually did post a link in the chat room for those that are interested about the various experiments, because these are things which can be repeated to look into for anybody that is still a heliocentrist. Um, these are a few confirming witnesses, and again, the real science affirms that we are indeed as a plane, that the Earth is not moving at any rate of speed. And these were things that were done by people that were believers in heliocentrism, that when they initially conducted the experiments, they were trying to uh, see what the rate of the Earth's spin was. And when they learned that there was no detectable motion to the movement of the Earth, well, then that completely that became evidence for the fact that the Earth is not in motion, not spinning once daily, and not moving in orbit around the sun. And so, this is absolute fact, and this one fact alone, and these many confirming witnesses from these various scientific experiments force us to have to reassess, to reevaluate, and to reconsider where we are and what we are living upon. And I mean, there's no two ways about it. But the whole idea that we are living on a ball that is moving, spinning on an axis, and that has orbital motion annually around the sun, all of that is complete fabrication.
Oh yes, I totally agree. I mean, with the just Aries failure alone, that experiment alone proves that the heavens are moving above us and that the Earth is relatively stationary. But the thing that really proves that we are truly stationary is with the Michelson-Morley experiment, they were assuming that we were already moving through the universe, and they were trying to detect a stationary ether while we're moving through it. And since they couldn't detect it, they were thinking there was no ether. And then if you look at the Sagnac experiment, he did prove that there was ether, but he did it through the rotation of a table. And the whole concept was, is it proved that ether is actually stationary. And if that's the case with the Michelson-Morley results, it would mean that we are stationary as well with the ether. So ether and us are both stationary, and that the heavens above us are moving. And I mean, from there you have to ask yourself, okay, how are these heavens formulated? How, what is the exact shape of the earth itself? A lot of people are saying it's completely 100% flat. Some say it's an infinite plane. Some say, there's boundaries. I tend to go with more of a bowl shape. I kind of got this concept in my mind that, the dome above us, the highest dome is sort of like a bowl on top of a bowl. And this is just kind of my concept. And I think there's also more than one dome above us is kind of where I'm going with it. But I think there's some sort of dome at 100 kilometers up at the Kármán line, based on various evidences I've looked into, like sprites and other things. But you also have the factor of halos and rainbows, which don't make sense if there's no dome above us. Because I mean, if you go into a house and you spray, some mist from a water gun or whatever, you're not going to see any rainbow effect unless you're looking in a mirror, because the mirror acts as the other polarizer. And that's why you can see a rainbow when you look in the mirror when you spray a mist in the house, but you won't see it if you don't do it in front of the mirror and if you're looking just straight at it,
Hold that thought, because
Okay.
I'm going to ask you about that in a little more detail when we return. We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. I wanted you to elaborate a little bit more for those that don't understand as far as the polarizing effect and how you need that in order to cast a rainbow, which, in my opinion, affirms the attest to the authenticity, the veracity that indeed there is a firmament above us. And when I say firmament, a transparent, solid structure, which influences and shows through the polarizing effect of rainbows that it is indeed there.
Well, actually, what it was is I first saw this video on YouTube about creating artwork where you make sort of a rainbow effect with the artwork, and it required two polarizers. And someone was pointing this out because he also believed that there's a dome above us. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. When you're doing artwork, it requires two polarizers. When you go into the house, you need two polarizers. Why is it when you go outside, you need one? Where's the other polarizer, right? So obviously, the only way you can scientifically explain that is if there's either a polarizer above us, either around the sun or around the earth. Somehow in between us and the sun, there's some sort of crystalline structure, something to a plane effect, or it could be curved in some way. Like I said, it doesn't have to be straight or something to that effect, but it has to be sort of a plane shape, whether it be a curved plane or not. But it has to be crystalline, whether that means it being glass or ice or whatever type of crystal type material. But it has to be something to that effect. Even water itself can act as a polarizer. But obviously, water, I guess, with water, it'd probably be frozen up above us, So that's kind of the idea.
Now, you had also mentioned before we went to break that you feel like there's more than one dome. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, just kind of like based on scripture, and it seems like there has to be more. It talks about there being more than one heaven, and the fact that at 100 kilometers there appears to be some sort of dome. I don't know if you believe that the International Space Station is where they claim it is, but I personally think it's actually up there. I don't think they can go to it physically with humans. I think that it's just controlled robotically or whatever. I think maybe at one time they tried to make it to where they could go up there with humans, but I think it failed. I don't think people can actually live up there. So, you've probably seen all these fake footage of alleged people on the International Space Station with their hair sprayed funny and stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay,
and then
okay.
the whole the scuba divers and all that in
Right, yeah,
connection
yeah.
to it as well.
Well, I still think that there's probably, I think they probably do have something up there that's taken this footage. Although a lot of people think it's fake, I don't personally think it's fake. I think they doctor it, but the fact that you can see something up there that at the Kármán line, it looks like there's some physical, uh, some sort of dome or physical something at the Kármán line. For me, if they were going to fake the whole thing up there, they wouldn't want even to have that in the footage at all. It wouldn't even make sense to have it in the footage because it can make you ask the question, what is that? Because you see something there. I think you'd probably know what I'm talking about. It looks like there's something at the 100-kilometer Kármán line. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. But my another question that I have in regard to the International Space Station is how would it be? How would it maintain its elevation up there? I mean, because the whole way that satellites work and the whole premise behind satellites is that they are continually falling as they,
Right.
orbit.
Like with the Hubble telescope, for example, I think that's on a Boeing 747. I did a video on that recently because I think it's connected to Sophia, and I put on some video footage from the guy's channel's Veritas. I can't remember the exact name, Veritas something. Um, and he has an interesting channel where he talks a lot about this topic with the Hubble telescope. But I don't think that's in space because, like you said, you need to have something that keeps it in its position. But with the International Space Station, from what I understand, they're supposed to have certain sort of thrusters or something on it. And of course, then it gets into the debate: do thrusters work in space? I'm not trying to get into all that here, but my point is if you go look at any International Space Station footage, like almost half the photos or more, you can see something like a dome above the Earth. If you look, it's like a line that goes above the surface of the Earth, and it follows the same contour of the surface of the Earth. And of course, the video footage is using a panoramic camera, so we know it's not the shape that they're showing. But you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Unfortunately, I
because
can't
they
show a
show
picture here, but yeah,
right because
I
they
think a lot of
show
people
it
probably know.
as curved, as far as the International Space Station. Um,
Right.
but here's another concern that I have as far as the footage that they've shown, and I've shared this in video myself, is that there have been times that while they're showing, the Earth scrolling beneath the International Space Station, that all of a sudden it flashes to green screen. Have
Oh,
you
yeah,
ever
well,
seen
I
that?
think actually, honestly, I think a lot of these, I think some of the footage is faked. I think some of it might be real and some of it's fake. It's like a topic that people debate. I don't think everything's fake. Some people, like for example, with all these false flag shootings, everybody thinks, oh, well, it's all 100% hoax and all of it's fake. I think that some of the stuff's real. It makes more sense that part of it's real than all of it's fake. You know what I mean? I think, for example, they do stick space shuttles up, but that's about as much as they can do. They've never went to the moon. I think a lot of the stuff they say is not true. And the question is, how do they put these satellites up in space? Maybe they're attached to the dome. I don't know how exactly all that works, but I haven't had a chance to look into all that in great detail either. So
Okay.
it's a lot of debate stuff.
Oh
But
yeah, totally. I mean, we're all still learning about these things, and that's why it's good to share dialogue so that we can learn from one another. But also, with regard to the International Space Station or to satellites, how do you think they exist in the thermosphere with the temperatures being
oh
what
yeah, I don't think
they
so.
are?
Well, I don't think there's any that are out far for one because I don't think they could go out that far anyways. But If there are any in space, it would be relatively close, and I kind of think that maybe they're attached to the dome because you'll notice that a lot of them don't. That they seem to be in perfect alleged orbit with the Earth, which makes me think they're probably just attached to the dome. And since the Earth don't move, it doesn't move, you know. But
Uh-huh.
that's just kind of what I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't believe all these satellites are in space. If that's what you're asking, I think a lot of
Oh
that's.
yeah, I don't either.
I kind of wonder if they're attached to the dome itself. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But I'm not for sure exactly how all that works. So
Yeah. I don't know that any of them exist or are in uh, hovering up there because again the Earth isn't. I know for certain that it's not a ball like they say it is
right,
because there's no measurable curvature. I mean,
right.
you can go out and looking at lighthouses at 60 miles or whatever,
Oh
that
yeah,
it verifies that there's no curvature. And so if there's no curvature and the earth is not a ball, well then they're not falling in orbit to maintain a continual orbit around the earth and not falling. It makes me question as to how they are sustaining themselves up there and if they are up there at all. And then the whole thing with the International Space Station, I'm most certainly like you. If it is up there, I don't believe that there are people certainly not living on it, year
yeah, for
round.
sure, for
Um,
sure, man. They'd be dead. They'd be toasty.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
Then
think it's habitable. I think they
right.
maybe tried it at first, but I think it failed really quickly. If they did try it,
Hmm.
um, maybe they got a couple dead bodies up there. I don't know. I don't know, man.
Yeah, yeah. These are things that we still, haven't come to really discernment on. But there seems to be some kind of like if they go up to a certain point, there seems to be some kind of a sustained weightlessness. And so I don't know if you go up to a certain degree but it's still below the level of the firmament. If that is any way kind of negates the pull of density upon you. I don't know how that works, but
So
there
you think
seems
okay? So you think it's with gravity? You think it's all purely density based, like specific gravity, specific weight type of thing, or what?
I don't. Yeah, I don't think that there's gravity in the sense that
Like
you
they
know,
like they claim.
yeah, like they claim, and that's what holds all the oceans to a ball Earth. But
Well,
that
there's also the
density and buoyancy work to because just weight in itself pushes down upon you, and the earth being the foundation, the plane of which we all walk upon, our weight is what's going to keep us, grounded and stuck to it, and not some magical glue as far as
well, I mean, there's
gravity.
also the. Have you ever heard of the electromagnetic type theory of it?
Oh
Because
yeah, uh-huh.
I lean towards that, and also, I mean, obviously the specific weight has something to do with it as well, but I think it's
Hmm.
probably electromagnetic as well. And I think that's why when you see a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, you have some sort of disturbance, and that's why with the Foucault pendulum, it actually gets screwed up when there's an eclipse. When there's a was it a solar or lunar? I think it's is it a lunar? I think it's a solar eclipse. When there's a solar eclipse, the Foucault pendulum stops going the correct direction. It slightly goes off in a certain few degrees, which is not supposed to be the case. The Foucault pendulum allegedly proves that we're rotating, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's the electromagnetic nature of how the sun and moon are moving around the Earth that is causing the Foucault pendulum to move the way it is. So it's the sky above rotating that is causing the Foucault pendulum to rotate. The electromagnetic waves that cause the sky to move is what's causing the Foucault pendulum to move. And then when they have a solar eclipse, it screws it up because the two are in disturbance. And I think that's also a proof against the whole concept of the spinning ball. If we were just on a spinning ball, the Foucault pendulum wouldn't be affected by a solar eclipse.
Right, Right.
So
Exactly.
that's yet another proof,
Hmm. Well, you mentioned the electric universe in connection to density or um, gravity, as they try to claim it to be. It, let me get you to elaborate on that, son.
Well, I think, all forces are actually electromagnetic in nature, I believe. This is what Nikola Tesla sort of postulated when you break it down. So I think actually gravity is an electromagnetic thing as well. I don't think it's, as they define it, as a weak force. I think it's just electromagnetic in nature, and it has to do with some sort of connection between the sky and the earth. I'm not exactly sure how it would all work, but this is kind of what I'm postulating it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
Well, like
Um,
for example, if we were in a bowl and like the highest echelon dome was also like a bowl on top of a bowl, I wish I could show a diagram of this. And if the sky is rotating in a certain way, I think it could cause if you have certain electromagnetic pulses going through one side to the other, I think it could somehow cause gravity. That's kind of the theory. And I've looked into it a little bit, but I haven't enough. I should look into it more. It's so hard to get time to look into all this stuff. You know what I mean?
well, you're busy raising children, and
Yeah, I got 4 kids here.
yeah, yeah, so that's a lot of full-time jobs. Um, but I want to get you to elaborate just a little bit more. You say that there's scriptural verification for multiple domes. So can you, I mean, because I
Well,
don't,
I can't say it's verification, but just sort of hints. If you look into the ancient Greek with like how it levels the different heavens, saying there's 3 heavens, I get the impression that the highest heaven is within another dome, the way it's described. And I kind of go with Rob Skiba on the concept of what New Jerusalem probably is. And I think actually,
what's
um,
that? Because I'm not
well,
sure.
he thinks it's a pyramid shape, or maybe some think a pyramid on top of a pyramid, and some think just a pyramid shape. I think the Great Pyramid is probably a model of what New Jerusalem's going to be. I don't think New Jerusalem's a cube. I think it's basically like what you see the Great Pyramid is. Um, and because you could either describe what it says in Scripture as a cube or as sort of a triangle type
Hmm.
shape.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I actually agree that it's a pyramid shape. And the reason I say so is because we see, you know how Lucifer, Satan, he counterfeits everything.
right.
And so the pyramid structure and it being, a predominant in all the megalithic sites, that to me is his replicating what is affirmed in Isaiah 14 as the Mount of the congregation and that New Jerusalem. Certainly, like you said, it could be either a cube or a pyramid that he wouldn't just replicate a pyramid form from nothing because he has no original ideas. And
Right.
so, in my opinion, he's counterfeiting what he has seen from when he used to have access to paradise before
Yeah,
being
because he was in the highest heavens. He was in the high. He was
exactly. Hmm.
the announcer, the protector of God, sort of. You know, kind of like the Secret Service, probably for God is kind of how I look at it. Maybe a sort of an announcer as well. I did a video on this some time ago as well. Um, he was in the highest heavens. He knows God pretty intimately. Obviously, he doesn't know everything because he tried to, you know, formulate his own false trinity. Obviously, he knew God was a trinity. And he sort of tried to
Hmm.
formulate his own mystery Babylon trinity, but obviously
Right.
he didn't get that all right. He couldn't figure out exactly how God was going to bring his son to the earth. He didn't know all that stuff. So he's trying to fake it, you know,
Hmm.
make his replica false, false Jesus, false Messiah type of thing.
Right.
Even before Christ came, he's trying to figure out how that was, and you could tell he clearly didn't get it right. The guy kept that stuff secret, and he didn't. Obviously, the devil didn't know it.
Hmm. Yeah, he didn't, and that's all. It mentions him as having only 9 stones, um, and the other priests, the Most High, the priests of the Most High, they have 12 stones in their ephod, so it's a different kind of thing. It reflects that he doesn't have knowledge of all the mysteries of the heavens, but he does have, a lot. In Ezekiel 28, it mentions him as being wiser than Daniel, and so he was quite knowledgeable in a lot of things, but certainly didn't have all the secrets.
Well, I think also the devil is sort of a keeper of knowledge in the aspect that he tries to keep everybody in ignorance while pretending to give knowledge, some secret knowledge. And he keeps all his minions in ignorance. They think that they know something and he might give them a little information. But I think in the end, they'll find out how much they were deceived by the devil, because the devil, that's
Right.
all he does is deceive everyone.
Yeah, a lot of promises, and he certainly doesn't uphold to a lot of. Even in the first book of Adam and Eve, it talks about how he makes all these promises, but that he himself never even believed them.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, going back to the extra biblical material, can you talk about some things that you've learned that you didn't glean just from the canonical texts, and I'll give you an example, like in studying the first book of Adam and Eve, and this is not elaborated upon in great detail, but it's my opinion that Adam and Eve, before their fall, that they were in paradise, not which everybody believes that they were. A lot of people believe that they were here upon the earth, but it's my opinion that they were not in human flesh form yet, in that they were immortal, bright natured beings in living in
Okay, I see what
paradise.
you're talking. I see.
Yeah,
Well, I read it as well. I kind of think that if you look at, like, I've seen some scientific studies that say that everything glows. It's just such a low level that no one can see it with the
right.
naked
Mhm.
eye. I kind of think that
Like the Carillion effect.
yeah, like our body was completely corrupted. Like I remember reading that it said something about him feeling stuff that he never felt before he fell, like
Right.
maybe
Fire,
hunger,
heat,
heat,
hunger, yeah,
hunger, stuff like, yeah.
cold,
And I remember they were glowing before they fell. Um,
clothed
you
in
know,
light.
clothed in light, exactly. And maybe because of that light being gone, that's why they felt they were naked, as the light was sort of their clothing.
Hmm.
And then after the light was gone, they felt naked, so that's when they had to make clothes. Um, I you, I kind of think, I don't know if they were in a different realm or not. I still think they were physical form, but obviously is a lot different than what we have now. What we have now is a fallen form of physical. And when I say that, some people, they think that you're just a spirit in heaven. I don't think so. I think that our our physical bodies are going to be much different than they are right now, but I still think they'll be physical. Um, what does that exactly mean per se? I don't know exactly, but um, I kind of lean towards we will still be physical, but it won't be the same as what we have right now. Obviously, we'll be glowing, like you said. I think it'll be Eden restored. It will be
Hmm.
glowing again, like we did before. And then there's people that have had near-death experiences that have said the same thing. When they went to heaven, they saw people that were glowing and stuff like that. So it makes sense. It's kind of like Moses going on Mount Sinai. He was in God's presence for such a long period of time, that he started glowing. When he came down, his face was glowing. I
Hmm.
guess the closer you are to God, the more you're going to glow. Obviously, it sounds like.
Well, he's got that glory, that radiance, and being in his presence. Even like with Yeshua, when we are in New Jerusalem with him, there won't be need for a sun because he is the light of the world, and so
Yeah.
that kind of affirms that whole principle. But
Well,
anyways,
going back to
good.
what you said though, you were talking about what have I seen uh, in pseudepigraphical works and the apocryphal works. I remember reading Genesis Apocryphon in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I thought that was a really interesting book.
Hmm.
It talks about when Noah was born and how he didn't look the same as all the rest of the humans,
Hmm.
and that's why they were shocked they thought maybe he was one of the sons of the fallen, right?
Right.
But and then the wife said, no, you remember when we were doing it and actually described it? I'm like, that's really shocking. They're like describing it in this work. And he's like, she's saying, no, I only had sex with you. I never had sex with anything else other than you. Was it Lamech is Noah's father?
Yes.
Yeah. So at any rate, they took him to, they took him to Enoch or something to make sure that he was truly human. And he said, yes, he's human.
Right.
I'm thinking maybe he was albino or something. I'm not sure exactly, but, Noah
that's what it says in the text, that he was glowing white, and that even his hair was white.
Yeah, so that sounds like an albino kind of. So maybe
Right.
Noah was an albino. I don't know.
I don't know, but certainly there was
It kind of
something
makes sense,
unique
though.
about
I mean,
him.
if he's like the father of all the human race today, you would have to have like the combination of everything in you, and maybe albino somehow does. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but those different texts are interesting. Anything else? Well, we're almost to the next break, but when we return, think about anything else of interest that you learned in, just studying some of this material, even like with the Book of Enoch, because it's my opinion we would not know as much as we do on the Genesis 6, the sons of God mating with the daughters of humanity and creating a race of giants, that all of that would just be cryptical, arcane knowledge without the Book of Enoch, and that certainly that material helps us to understand in greater and more profound way the whole context of the Genesis 6 passage.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think what's really interesting is Jude he gives us a warning to not forget these books, and he's citing these books, but he doesn't call them out by name. The Assumption of Moses, the Book of Enoch. He's like, don't forget these works. Yet the church forgot these works. And what are these works? They're sort of a key that locks our ancient history to understanding why there was a flood. Why was there a global flood? And why did God have the Israelites go through and commit what it seems to be genocide?
Right.
But it wasn't
spare genocide. No man, woman, or child. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. Here's a little tidbit that not a lot of people know about, especially for those that do not believe the Book of Enoch to in any way be inspired, which I absolutely 100% know it to be, just because of the work that I've done in decrypting the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, which in that decryption I affirmed that as far as the circle of the earth with the earth having a vaulted dome above it, that material is absolutely encoded into the Book of Enoch, and the knowledge of understanding that portion of the text has been lost for the last 500 years at least, because of our embrace of the heliocentric worldview. And my last book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, absolutely verifies that, and the veracity of the Book of Enoch as being divinely inspired. But just wanted to also let people know that Yeshua, Christ himself, specifically referenced the Book of Enoch in a passage in Matthew chapter 23, verse 20, where it says, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven." And what is so interesting about that particular passage is it is recited by people as rebuttal against the Genesis 6 having anything to do with the sons of God being fallen angels. But it absolutely does affirm that, because it is actually referencing a chapter 15 in the Book of Enoch, which specifically cites and is linked to that passage that I had just read. So I'll read this real quick and then I'll get you to comment on it. Again, the passage is in Matthew chapter 23, verse 20, where it says, "For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven." And I would also say that even though angels are not given in marriage, this particular passage does not reference that they cannot have sex with human women, especially when they are placed into human form, as is verified by the Kebra Nagas, chapter 100, which talks about the Genesis 6 incursion. But anyways, the chapter 15, the verses in the book of Enoch read as this. Then addressing me, he spoke and said, "Hear, neither be afraid, O righteous Enoch, you scribe of righteousness, approach hither and hear my voice. Go say to the watchers of heaven who have sent you to pray for them, you ought to pray for men and not men for you. Wherefore have you forsaken the lofty and holy heaven, which endures forever, and having lain with women, have defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, have taken to yourselves wives, have acted like the sons of the earth, and have begotten an impious offspring. You, being spiritual, holy, and possessing a life which is eternal, have polluted yourselves with women, and have begotten in carnal blood, have lusted in the blood of men, and have done as those who are flesh and blood do. These, however, die and perish. Therefore have I given to them wives, that they might cohabitate with them, that sons might be born of them, and that this might be transacted upon earth. But you from the beginning were made spiritual, possessing a life which is eternal, and not subject to death forever. Therefore I made not wives for you, because being spiritual, your dwelling place is in heaven. Now the giants who have been born of spiritual spirit and flesh shall be called upon earth evil spirits, and on earth shall be their habitation. Evil spirits shall proceed from their flesh, because they were created from above. From the holy watchers was their beginning and primary foundation. Evil spirits shall they be upon the earth, and the spirits of the wicked shall they be called. The habitation of the spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but upon earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits, who are born on earth. Almost done. The spirits of the giants shall be like clouds, the Nephilim, which shall oppress, corrupt, fall, content, and bruise upon earth. They shall cause lamentation. No food shall they eat, and they shall be thirsty. They shall be concealed, and shall rise up against the sons of men and against women, for they come forth during the days of slaughter and destruction. That's the book of Enoch, chapter 15, verse 1 through 10. Comment?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I mean, it's very interesting you quoted that Matthew 23, because it also references the book of Tobit. And I actually came to the same conclusion as you about it referring to marriage and giving in marriage, is that it's referring to earthly marriage. It's referring to the fact that we die. And then when we make a covenant to marry, the covenant of the marriage ends at death, as Paul said. That's supposed to be the official ending, is when you die, or, of course, there's divorce in some cases. But the fact is, we are a species that die, and that's why we have children to continue on after we die.
Right.
And that's what this whole marriage is. It's an earthly marriage that Jesus is referring to. He's not referring to how people are united in heaven, which obviously I'm sure people can be united in heaven. It's a completely different thing, but I guess it would be similar to what marriage is, but in a different respect,
Yeah, well, they
Go
wouldn't
ahead.
have to bring forth children, because that's
Right,
a
exactly.
totally earthly thing,
Right. And
as
then
you said.
also, Jesus is referring to the book of Tobit there, because that's when the Sadducees asked him about a woman who had a husband and he died, and then another husband
Right.
and he died. And that's referring to a story in the book of Tobit about a woman who was a righteous woman that kept marrying evil men, and a demon kept killing them, or some sort of evil
Mm-hmm.
spirit or something kept killing them. until she married finally a guy who was righteous, and they prayed for the night before they had sex, and then the next night after they were married, they had sex, and nothing happened. He didn't die like all the other ones did.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but actually, no, that's great. You were mentioning that. Go ahead, though. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and there are other books like the Testament of Solomon is also referenced by Yeshua when he says one greater than Solomon is here, and because Solomon in that testament, you understand that he was given a ring where he was then had the authority over all the demons and the fallen angels, and so he was considered to be great. And that even in the Jewish lore, the he also controlled all the animals, and so he was great amongst the animals. Even and he even had a great white eagle which he would ride upon when he wanted to fly over the earth. And he also had a great white lion who was the king of the jungle of all the lions, and he would ride upon his back when he would, journey through the desert regions. And so
Sounds like the
Solomon,
Chronicles of Narnia there or something.
oh, it certainly does. I mean, it absolutely does, and even like the whole basis for the flying carpet, that
Yeah,
Solomon had a carpet that allowed him to
very interesting.
travel and journey, and
Well,
all of that is based on that as well. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, Jesus was obviously very familiar with the Book of Enoch. The very fact that he called himself the Son of Man all the time,
Right.
that the Book of Enoch is about the only book other than like one verse in Daniel where it refers to the Son of Man. Other than that, the Book of Enoch refers to the Messiah as the Son of Man all over the place in the Book of
Yes.
Enoch. And I think Jesus said probably about 10 things that are related to the Book of Enoch. I did a video citing all these different verses. Just type into YouTube Jesus in the Book of Enoch, and it'll probably come up near the top. Just look for my video from Godrules, and I basically cite all these verses where Jesus is speaking, and he's referring to things from the Book of Enoch.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't have them all memorized though, so
Right.
and I can't pull up the video in front of me unfortunately either. But
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
was
know
going to
what you're
mention.
talking
Go
about.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying I know what you're talking about. Because my friend Casey Brown, after I did a show with him, he asked me because I referenced in that show that Yeshua directly quoted from the Book of Enoch, and he didn't know what I was talking about, so I sent him that passage, and I was actually reading from an email that I had just sent him when I told him about that particular passage and its connection to that Matthew 23:20. But he, like you, created a video where he talked about the multiple things which are connected to in the scriptures and the canonical text to the Book of Enoch. And so, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But go ahead.
Yeah, cool. No, that's cool, man. Um, I was also going to mention you said you wanted to talk a little bit about the Book of Enoch. I guess I always say it wrong, but I wanted to mention that the way that the fallen angels are situated is completely different than how you are commonly told, or the way you commonly perceive just from the New Testament and the Old Testament, because it doesn't really tell you a lot about the structure with the Old Testament books as we have them in the 66 books. But what I was going to mention is, a lot of people think that all the fallen angels are just on the earth right now or something, but actually, according to the Book of Enoch, quite a few of them were locked up in Tartarus that
Hmm.
were on the earth. And I think, and I also have kind of a theory on, a lot of people think that Satan's already fallen to the earth. Well, it says that he's the prince of the power of the air. I think he actually, his normal habitation, the devil himself, the one we call the devil now, there's actually 5 Satans, but the one that's not locked up, that's around right now, his habitation's not on the earth. He's still the prince of the power of the air. Okay, and I think actually when it talks about in Revelation when he's thrown to the ground and he's full of great wrath, and then he goes and opens the bottomless pit, I think that's actually a future event, and I think he hasn't. And what I'm trying to say is, in the Book of Enoch, it talks about these fallen angels coming down, these watchers coming down on Mount Hermon, and making a pact to do a deed where they were going to marry women, right? And I think at that point is when they were encapsulated. I guess you would say that they became their fallen nature in the aspect of they were bound to the earth. And I think that the devil, as you see him today, is sort of like playing games so that he hasn't. This is just my theory, that he hasn't been actually thrown completely to the earth yet, where he's bound to the earth. And when he is thrown to the earth, he's going to be pretty pissed off about it. And that's when he goes and opens the bottomless pit and lets out his buddies. And then that's when we have basically all chaos in the end times, which is probably not too far away. But based on some of these pseudobiographical books, it's 6,000 years, and that time's about up, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's the year 5776 according to the ancient Hebrew calendar. Oh, which that reminds me of something that I learned earlier today, and I thought this was very interesting. I was looking at a book called the Seder Olam, Seder, which means book. Olam, I don't know what Olam means, but
Olam means that's the Hebrew term for what is that? It has something to do with hell. It has something to do with hell. Olam.
Oh, really? Huh.
Hades. I think it's no Olam. Either Olam has to do with like eternal something, or it has to do with hell. It's something to that effect.
Okay, well, I'll look it up here in just a second. But anyways, I was looking at a book. This individual, I forget I think his name is Ken Johnson. He did a translation, a Christian interpretation of this 2,000-year-old text, and it was in the text itself. It goes back again to the beginning of creation, as far as the modern era, beginning with Adam and Eve, and you know how the Israelites, the Hebrew, they count from that point forward, not like before Christ, BC, and then AD, and Domini, but they count. The first year was Adam, the creation of Adam, and then to now, according to their count, it's the year 5,776. But anyways, what I found and discovered, which was very interesting in looking at that particular text, is that Abraham was led away from Sumer and from Ur in the year 1948, which which is the reason it's interesting is because that is also the year that the fig tree bloomed. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, where it says, "Know ye the parable of the fig tree?" Well, anyways, that particular blooming of the fig tree, which Christ also says that when this event happens, that this will be the generation that sees the fulfillment of all prophecy, and also the second coming and the return of Yeshua, and then the harvest and judgment and all of that. And so there's a pseudepigraphal book called the Apocalypse of Peter, which is not.
I've read a little of that.
Yeah. Well, it's not included in the biblical canon, but in that particular book, which, Peter is also another one of the apostles, he asked Yeshua specifically, just like in Matthew 13, where they ask him, the apostles go up and ask him, explain to us the parable of the wheat and the tares, we know it not. Well, Peter goes up to Yeshua and asks him, explain to us the blooming of the fig tree, we know it not. And he tells them specifically that the fig tree is the house of Israel. And so he's telling them that when you see Israel being regathered as a nation, which is going to be a future event, because it wasn't until May 14th, 1948 that Israel came into being again. And he said that this would be the generation that sees the fulfillment of all the prophecies and the second coming of the Messiah. But what is interesting, and it's connected to the Seder Olam that I'm talking about, is that it says that Well, first in Psalms 90, it says that a generation is either 60 or fourscore, meaning it's 70 or 80 years. And so I was looking at the year count, and so when Abraham was led out was 1948, but then the covenant, the Most High established covenant with Abraham in the year 2018, which I thought
Really?
that was fascinating because if you look at the blooming of the fig tree happened in 1948, you add 70 years to that, it brings you to 2018. And
Wow.
yeah, and so it totally aligned with uh, those two pieces of information. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating because in my last book, I also explained the blooming of the fig tree and how it is connected to the recreation of the nation of Israel. And I also spoke about, the whole context of the generation and how, because it's my opinion that because of the blooming of the fig tree that happened in our lifetimes, that we are confirmed as the last generation, as the generation that will see the fulfillment of the prophecies as laid out in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. And
Well, how
then
do you,
when
well, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
ask you, how do you mentioned the 5,776. How do you correlate with that with this prophecy? Are you thinking that maybe they just have the dating a little wrong?
I don't know exactly how that plays out. I mean, I'm not certain. I don't know if there's dating that is wrong or if there's still, 300 years and somehow some way that is still. I mean, I don't know how to rectify all that, but I
I
do
thought it was
know.
interesting though because like the numbers you're laying out there is kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking within the next anywhere from 25 to 300 years. I was thinking is the end based on various pseudobiographical works I read. A
Hmm.
lot of them tend to be leaning towards a lot less time, like 30
Right,
plus years.
right.
But there was like one or two that seemed to maybe put it out a little bit farther. And the dating, actually there's actually many ways you can date, and a lot of people debate. I actually saw this article is really ridiculous. It showed like 5 different ways to date using different methodologies going through the scriptures, and actually it's a pretty complex topic. You would think it'd be very simple, but actually there's a lot of room for debate on how to date it anyways. So
Yeah, yeah, I don't know exactly how that plays out, but what is interesting to me, and I explained this also in the chapter that I wrote on the blooming of the fig tree, is that the whole sign of Revelation 12, where the virgin is clothed with the sun, she has the moon beneath her feet, a child within her womb, and a crown of 12 stars that is actually a alignment. It's a celestial configuration
oh
that occurs on the Feast of Trumpets in the year 2017. And
wow,
the
that's cool.
yeah, September 23rd, 2017.
You
And,
got to send me a link on some of that stuff. This sounds interesting. I haven't heard this stuff before. This is
yeah,
kind of
I'll be glad to do it. I'll do it after the show, as a matter of fact.
okay, cool.
And before the next break, I'll pull up a video that's linked to what I'm talking about, and I'll give it to Kathy in the chat room. But anyways, this has been affirmed. What it is the Virgin is the constellation of Virgo, um, and she's clothed with the sun, meaning that the sun is there in the constellation of Virgo in this particular alignment. Jupiter, as the child, is within her womb, which is interesting because Jupiter was also the star of Bethlehem, according to the individual that did the work on the Star of Bethlehem. Do you know what I'm talking about? The lawyer.
Yeah,
Yeah, who,
yeah,
who
I've heard of that
yeah,
before.
yeah. Well, anyways, he discovered and broke down with this same program the Starry Night or Stellarium, because you can look at the configuration of the stars during any time going back in history or forward, and look at what the constellations and the stars and the planets, how they will be configured. But anyways, on September 23rd, 2017, on the Feast of Trumpets, which is also interesting because
That's an
Yeshua,
interesting date, by the way, too. Yeah.
yeah, and it's also interesting because Yeshua, when he came in his first coming, he fulfilled the first four feasts of the Most High. You know, the seven feasts that are in Leviticus chapter 23.
That's
He
around
died.
Jesus' birthday, too. Jesus is, well, there's debate on that, but
Right,
some
right.
is it
Well, like
September?
September, yeah,
Yeah,
September
but go ahead.
11th. But yeah, and so, anyways, when he came the first time, he was the Passover lamb. He killed before Passover. He was entombed on unleavened bread and resurrected on the day of first fruits. And then 50 days later on Pentecost, that's when the Holy Spirit came to the apostles. And so, with his second coming, he will fulfill the three remaining feasts, which are the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
this whole alignment with the woman clothed in the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, a child in her womb, and a crown of 12 stars, which are the three planets Mars, Mercury, and Venus, and the nine-star constellation of Leo above her head, that this whole celestial alignment occurs on September 23rd, the Feast of Trumpets, 2017. And so all of these, you know, affirming witnesses, I mean, it's all mind blowing. And not saying, you know, the absolute end of days is on the Feast of Trumpets 2017, but that certainly will be a significant date. However,
Yeah,
it plays out,
sounds
I
like
don't
it.
know how it will
This-
play out, but it definitely, in my opinion, will be very significant.
Well, all those can be kind of tricky. You've seen probably some of these people on YouTube going around trying to date guess, and I know you're not trying to do
Oh,
that
no,
here,
I'm
but
not doing that at all.
yeah, but you're just trying to say it's a significant date for people to look into, especially considering all the alignments there of the
Right.
script and revelation. But and I think some of those people on YouTube that do that, like Renee M, I think are just deliberately put there by the devil to throw people off and to get people not to actually mock uh, the second coming,
Mm-hmm.
because they keep date setting and they're always wrong.
And they're always wrong, right?
Exactly. And so I kind of think that those people are planted by the devil into the church to make a
Cause
mockery of it.
division and also, yeah, to create a mockery.
Right.
But
But I mean, you can really look into these topics and find patterns, and
right,
especially the pseudepigraphical works and the apocryphal. Is it the Epistle of Barnabas where it talks about 6,000 years as well? All of them seem to point to 6,000 years. I
right.
mean,
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
that's not something that's really debatable.
Right. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. And then the 1,000-year millennial kingdom, that's 7,000 years. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I do have a really quick announcement for everybody. I just finished the second proofread of what will be my 10th book, The Firmament, the Vaulted Dome of the Earth, and I plan on releasing it to the public on my father's birthday, which is July 28th. And so it will be released to everybody, and it's 400 right now. It's 426 pages long, and it is the most extensive work, I believe, anywhere available on the structure of the firmament and its connections to all of um, all of the materials and the things that we've been talking about here, but so many extra biblical and canonical texts and scriptures, and so those of you that have been looking forward to it and waiting for it, it will not be long now. So God bless all of you. But let me go back to you, Brother Godrules, Anthony. And can you tell us about some of the things that you've been lately investigating, researching, looking into?
Okay, first, actually, I wanted to mention that my birthday is one day after your father's there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
What a
July
trip.
29th. But
That's pretty cool.
yeah, I thought that was interesting. Also, my brother's birthday. My brother died a year ago in a car accident or motorcycle accident. He was born September 22nd, and you were talking about that September 23rd thing. So I thought that.
Right. Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah.
But what I've been working on lately, the last video I did was on the Hubble Space Telescope, and I basically took a video from Planet Verti's channel, and I put in a bunch of imagery because he just did a conversation. He called someone up on the phone that was in the SOFIA program. SOFIA is also a telescope, kind of like Hubble, except for they would do it from a Boeing 747, and it's at a different optical level than what Hubble does. It does the infrared instead of the standard range, for
Uh-huh.
eyesight.
Uh-huh.
And I went through and I basically put a bunch of photos and video footage in it, kind of to make it so people could understand it better. And that video is taking off like crazy. It's really, really popular right now. It's going up to near 100,000 views already. But
Nice.
that was the last one I did. So, and the whole idea was he called this guy in the Sophia program. He also called a number of other people. He called
Oh, I listened to that conversation actually.
okay, yeah, so you
Yeah.
know all about it. But so basically the idea is that he found photos that were the exact same between the Sophia and the Hubble Space Telescope program, and he basically thinks or postulates that both of them are on the Boeing 747 because
Uh-huh.
they could easily have done it from the same plane even. It's kind of the idea. So obviously Hubble would have already been in the ocean anyways because of how long it's been in space and the fact that it doesn't have any thrusters on it. It would have been out of orbit a long time ago, but they pretend as if it's still in orbit.
Uh-huh.
And that's not to count the fact that they highly edit every photo that they do take with the Hubble anyways, which I'm pretty sure you probably already know that anyways, but they do a lot of editing to each photo that they put out to add all the colors in and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's my opinion also that the majority of that is fake anyways. And the whole
A few
thing
of
with
them
the
are
Hubble,
fake, yeah. I think a
yeah,
few of them are fake, but yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
And that, yeah, they are heavily doctored and edited. But anyways, as far as the Hubble, if they wanted to completely lay arrest the whole debate of, whether the Earth is flat or convex or concave or whatever they want to affirm, all they'd have to do is turn the Hubble towards the Earth and give us a bunch of high resolution shots of it supposedly in its spherical glory, and then we all
Yeah.
of us would just shut up on all this. But because they can't do that and haven't done that, the debate rages on. And so,
So you don't
whether
like their panoramic cameras then, obviously. That's not good enough for you.
no, it's not. And did you see they just recently released another supposed video of the moon going before the Earth?
I saw the last one and it was just
Oh my
absolutely,
gosh,
it was so horrible. It
it
looked so
is.
fake. I showed my wife. Okay, my wife doesn't even get into these science topics at all. And
Uh-huh.
I just told her, look, this is some video footage from NASA. Do you think it looks real or fake? And she said it looked fake. And she believes in heliocentrism, so
Right. Yeah.
she thought it looked fake.
Yeah.
I mean, she has no reason to think it looks fake.
Right. But it absolutely does. I mean, it's not with all the millions and billions of dollars they are allocated every year, and for them to not even be able to generate anything of a quality product as far as the hoax, then that is, I mean,
They should get some of
it's
those
ridiculous,
game programmers because some of those guys are really good at faking stuff. They
right?
could
Yeah,
probably do a better
totally.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if they want to make it believable, I mean, you would think that they would give more consideration to the lies and the perpetuation of it, but they don't even care. I mean, the quality of the work that they release and claim as authentic, I mean, it's ridiculous. Which leads me to the next question. I wanted to ask you about your investigation of NASA and the kind of hoaxes that you've discovered, uncovered, and what you thought about their, affirmations as far as their achievements, their accomplishments, the photos that they've given us of the Earth and things of that nature.
Well, I mean,
Also the Van Allen radiation belt.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, obviously we haven't been through it yet. I know they're attempting to go through it with this Orion mission that they're postulating doing. Allegedly, we did it so many years ago, 50 plus years ago. We already went through it on the moon
Yeah,
landings.
several times, right?
Several Apollo missions. Last one was Apollo 17, right? I think. Or am I thinking
Something
right?
like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I did a video on the stereoscopic method of analyzing some of the video footage for the Apollo 17 mission, which is basically just, when something's farther in the distance, it doesn't move when you move side to side, but if something's closer, it moves more when you move side to side. And you can actually approximate how far away something is based on how much it moves. And using that methodology, that scientific methodology, you could tell that a lot of these alleged mountains in the background were maybe at most 100, 120 meters away, which would give you the idea that it's probably in a hangar that they were doing the Apollo missions. And obviously it wasn't, 2 kilometers away as they claimed, a lot of these mountains in the footage. So, I mean, stuff like that. And actually what was really interesting is the guy who did this article that I was covering, PhD guy, I think he's from the Ukraine or something. He said that they're actually trying to doctor, after he did that article, they started trying to doctor some of the photos and stuff to actually align with stereoscopic. It's like they were going back to fix their errors,
Right.
But, I mean, other than that, you have lots of problems with the moon landings. I mean, the Earth's not even the correct size in the sky in a lot of the photos.
Right.
There's so many things. You could just sit here all day going over all the things that are wrong with it.
Yeah, true.
And of course, you got that video footage. I forgot the guy's name, but the documentary guy that provided video footage that he
Barry Cybrow. Yeah.
Yeah, where it shows that they're just taking the photo through the circular window on the
the lunar module, the Apollo 11. Yeah. Which,
But, I mean,
when I first discovered that, I was like, all right, if they are having to hoax that the Earth is a sphere by utilizing the window of the lunar module, what does that say about the Earth being in that particular shape? It doesn't bode well at all.
Oh, no, it doesn't. And then there's also just the photos. You can actually go into Photoshop and heighten different brightnesses and contrast, and you can find the edited the photos, the old photos from back in when they first went on the Apollo missions and such. And there's only a few alleged photos anyways. All the rest are just basically these fake computer generated ones. So
right. Well, let me ask you this.
You already know all this stuff anyways, right?
Yeah. And our listening audience is very up on all this as well. But let me ask you about your opinions as to the planets, the so-called wandering stars, what they are, and if there's anything out there that is Earth-like at all.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, I think, the sun and the moon are probably only a few thousand miles away, actually. And, I mean, there's actually a number of ways you can come to that conclusion, but I think that the divergence of rays as they come into the Earth just don't make sense with the alleged millions of miles away, 93 million miles away, allegedly the sun was.
Right.
It's not even remotely close to accurate. I did a few videos on light ray divergence showing that there's no way. And then also there's a deception, I think, in how we view a landscape. Because we're so used to seeing it the way it is, we don't think there's anything wrong with what we're seeing because we from birth we see what a landscape looks like and we just assume it's correct. But I think there's some optical illusions going on. Rob Skiba even did a video about this where he zoomed in on a ship and it looked like it was hovering above the water. I think there's some curvature going on with light rays, and then when you zoom in, allegedly the ship went over the horizon. You zoom in, and it's still fully there. And I
Right.
think there's some stuff going on with the landscape where it looks like it's a certain way, and it's not really exactly that way. But at any rate, I think with the planets, with the moon, for example, I'm under the impression that it's a half sphere. Maybe I'm not totally sure. The sun, a lot of people they debate whether or not the moon is reflecting the sun. What is your opinion on that? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, this is interesting because in the decryption that I did on the book of Enoch, it describes that the sun gives its light to the moon, but it does not say that it is reflecting it. And so,
Interesting.
in my opinion, there's an exchange, and whether the sun is, like a plant in that it's able to absorb the sun's rays and somehow and then convert it into its own. But the moon's
That's
light
curious.
has completely different properties than that
Right.
of the sun.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's
I'm
totally
leaning to
not
the same.
reflecting it.
I'm thinking the same way as you, actually. I'm kind of leaning towards that as well, that it does. I mean, there's a very minimal reflection. I think some of it might be, like you're saying, it somehow takes it in and emits it a different way or something.
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure how it is, but I'm leaning towards a very similar to what you're thinking theory
Yeah.
on that.
And I'm just basing that whole, kind of postulation on what the book of Enoch says, because there's, a whole passage, like several lines in a particular paragraph talking about this exchange. And so I postulate in my book about what that exchange is. But the whole fact that the lunar light has different properties than the solar light, um, affirms that it is not reflecting the sun's light, because you
Very
can't.
minimal. Yeah, very
Yeah,
minimal
because if it were reflecting the sun's light, they would have these same kind of
properties.
properties. Yeah, and it
Yeah,
would
because
affect people and plants in a similar manner.
right, because the sun heats up, and in the moon it actually
Right,
cools. Things
cools. Yeah, exactly.
it's
And
completely
also that moon's light, when they've done experiments with giving plants and even animals, subjecting them to only sunlight or only moonlight, and they've found that whereas sunlight has benefits, like they say we need vitamin D from the sun or whatever, that moonlight can actually be detrimental, that it too much of it can affect people and plants in a negative way.
Oh, really? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
People
that's
too.
totally interesting. Yeah. Yeah, people too.
Huh.
That there's some
Well,
debilitating effect to having too much moonlight.
some people they in different seasons, like there's less sunlight, and they say that there's some sort of mood change with
Yeah.
them. I don't know how all that works, but I've heard of things like that as well. I think sort of that the sun and the moon. I think the sun has sort of a Fibonacci sequence with how it moves, and I think that's why it's a little bit complex to explain, and the movements of the sun and the moon and the stars. And because of how I think of the shape of the Earth, I kind of think of it's more of a bowl shape. I don't look at it the exact same way as some flat earthers on how the movements of the planets and the sun and the moon is. But I've still been looking into it, and I do think it's kind of like a Fibonacci sequence is kind of what I'm thinking. And I've
When
noticed some flat earthers go that way too.
when you
But
say Fibonacci sequence, do you mean like its circuit around, above the plane of the Earth, or do you mean like, because Enoch describes the sun's motion back and forth between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn? And in
it
that movement,
go ahead.
it seems to have like an infinity sign shape. The analemma shows that it has like this figure eight motion to it.
Right, but with the seasons, I think it changes as it's going around or something, and it becomes more of a Fibonacci sequence. It's kind of how I'm looking at it. because of the season changes. I'm talking about year round, not just a temporary period of time.
Uh-huh. Well, just to let you know, as far as the decryption that I did in the book of Enoch, he describes there being six gates, equal gates between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and he describes the sun moving back and forth between these six gates, and like when it reaches, he begins the motion with it being located over the equator for the vernal equinox. And then for 3 months, it moves up towards the Tropic of Cancer. Once it reaches the Tropic of Cancer for the longest day of the year, that begins the season of summer. Then it reverses course and begins to move back down towards the equator. Once it reaches the equator again, that's the autumnal equinox. And then it takes 3 more months to move towards the Tropic of Capricorn. And when it reaches the Tropic of Capricorn, that's when the winter solstice is, which for us in the northern latitudes, that's the longest night of the year, shortest day of the year. That begins the season of winter, and then it reverses course and begins to move back towards the equator. And then when it reaches the equator, that ends winter and begins the new year.
It sounds like you might be saying the same thing because you're talking about the overall position of the sun at throughout the year
Yeah,
rather than like how it's
exactly.
moving in during the day and stuff.
Right,
Yeah, it's hard to visualize it here, unfortunately, because we're on sort of a radio. But
right.
maybe you can. I don't know. You said you're going to upload this to your YouTube channel too, right?
I've already uploaded it.
Oh, okay.
I published that book in September of last year, and
Oh,
so
that's cool.
I did a bunch of videos where I explained and decrypted all of that. So, yeah, all that's out there. I'll send you a
Cool,
link
man.
to a video that I did on all that where I explained that in very great detail.
Great. Yeah, send me that link, man. I like checking that stuff out.
Yeah, I'll do it. It's very interesting because, as I said, when you apply um,
Yeah, and
the
actually, with
most,
what you were saying with the Book of Enoch, that stuff was pretty confusing to me. But maybe you can make a lot more sense out of it. Because I remember reading all that, and I was like, this doesn't make a lot of sense just reading it.
oh
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, it was confusing to me too until last year when the Most High gave me the key to unlock all that, and then
Cool, man. I got to check this out, man, because I couldn't understand. I couldn't make heads or tails of some of that stuff.
yeah, I actually in that book, the Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, I take all 14 chapters of the book on the courses of heavenly luminaries and break down every passage.
Wow. I got to check that out, man. If you can make it very simple, that's great. Because I couldn't make a lot of sense out of it.
Yeah, well, it is simple once you understand what he's talking about and how to apply the flat Earth as being the key for the description of those motions. So, yeah, I'll send you the links to the all that afterwards, and I did a 7-part series where I covered most of the material of that book. It's very lengthy because, like I said, that book is 400 pages
Yeah,
long. But
it's a big
I
one.
did a 7-part series where I explained every portion of all that I covered, all those chapters on the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and so it's available freely on on the web on my YouTube channel. People don't have to buy the book in order to get the full gist of what I cover in that book.
Cool, man. You're kind of like me. I was the same way when I started with ministry. Is I figured if I'm going to sell it, I should be able to give it away for free because some people can't afford things, you know.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I give away all my material for free. I even, you know, send out PDFs of my material as well. But I do appreciate those that can afford to buy the books and that do, because that is what supports my livelihood. But
Oh yeah, everybody likes to have something in their hand, tangible that they can read and keep and
yeah,
have on hand,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I prefer to have books that way because, the research that I do, I want to be able to, and plus I don't like reading from a computer. I like to be outside in the sunshine and with the wind and just watching the roses bloom and be able to just read and look out on nature and hang out with my cats. And so, I'd much rather have a hard copy of a physical book than read from like a Kindle or from my
Oh yeah,
computer.
I don't like Kindle much, but yeah. Cool,
Yeah.
man.
Well, excellent, man. We've got 4 minutes remaining, so I want to give you a chance to give out your website and contact information once more, and then I'll let you wrap it up in final commentary.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, my YouTube channel is Godrules, and it's Godrules. That's one of my channels. I actually have 4 channels, but 2 of them are sort of in this realm, more sort of the Bible and conspiracy and the end times. My other one is called Sons of Thunder. You just type that into YouTube, and you'll see a cross, and that's my channel. And for my website, it's www.godrules.net. I've had that website for a long time. It has a lot of biblical resources on it, apologetics type stuff. But for stuff more along the lines of what we're talking about here, you probably want to check out Godrules and Sons of Thunder on YouTube.
Excellent. Any plans on releasing any new video or
Oh yeah,
material or and any topics that you're specifically covering?
I was planning on doing one on Nephilim Among Us, sort of, Nephilim today,
Yeah.
and I've been planning that video for a while. I just want to do it right. I don't want to just rush it out,
Yeah, most
Whenever,
certainly.
yeah, when I spend a little time making sure it's right, it ends up turning into a hit usually. So that's what I'm hoping. But yeah, I have that coming up soon. Hopefully, should be done maybe in a week or 2.
Excellent. Any plans on writing a book or compiling your material in any way?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me that many times. I should just sit down and do that because I have a lot of materials. I've even written out a lot of stuff. I've had articles on my website even. I even have practically articles under my videos often. So I probably should write a book or 2. You've already written 10. I haven't written anything. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good idea. I need to sit down and figure that out. I want to write a book. Since I'm not able to write as many as you, I'll probably end up, really thinking it through and trying to put a lot in one book, and it's
Yeah,
kind
most
of,
certainly. And
yeah.
and people like to have that kind of research material to just be able to review. And then the other thing about it is once you do compile it and put it into book form, whenever people question or ask about certain areas of your research, you can just say, well, here, check out this book, or check out this video in connection with this book, or, it really helps them in their own research and gives them something tangible to investigate.
Well, definitely. I definitely have some plans to do that in the future. I just haven't got down to it yet. So
Yeah. Well, you're raising 4 kids, man. I mean, that's that's
yeah,
a
that's a work in of
pretty.
itself right there.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's about 7 full-time jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So God bless you and your wife, man. And all right, with 40 seconds. So final comment to the listening audience.
Oh man, I had a fun time here. Thanks for asking me on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh
And
yeah,
thanks
no
to
worries at
everybody
all.
listening too.
Yeah, no worries at all. It was a good show, and we appreciate the fellowship. And yeah, thank you everybody in the chat room. It was good seeing you all, and we'll be back next week. Secrets revealed. God bless all. Good night.